Hey everyone, and welcome to my BARD guide. I have been incredibly excited to make this video. BARD has been my main champ for the better part of 7 years now. He is absolutely broken in solo queue conceptually, and I would love to see more play on him. I have over 1,000 games on him, including competitive and solo queue. So this is going to follow the same structure as my other champ guide videos. Like my other guides, this is going to be a longer format, and so I am going to encourage you to watch it in parts if you need to, and I'm going to put timestamps below to help you navigate around the video. And without further ado, let's jump into it. Let's start with Bard's identity, and I think he is inherently broken for solo queue. Solo queue is very fast-paced, you get to use his strengths a lot, and I also think he's quite underused for competitive as well. He also scales exceptionally well. His biggest weakness is laning, although you should be able to circumnavigate that with my tips and tricks. He is hard to master, although his difficulty is generally exaggerated, as he is non-committal. So mistakes that you do make, they're not game losing. And if you have the right identity, how you play him, what you're looking for in the game, then you'll largely be fine. He also rewards creativity, and he's a great option for those who enjoy making plays and carrying your team, as I do class him as a playmaker alongside Pyke. They are the only two. Playmakers are very mobile, and Bard in particular is a very cerebral type of champ. So the content that I'm going to show you, there are going to be some fundamentals set in stone for Bard, but there is going to be a lot of feel and a lot more examples for you to just kind of grasp what you should do with him and what his identity really is. For place in drafts, he is blindable if you have high champion mastery on him. You shouldn't need to worry about too much that is going on in the draft. Solo queue game pace, it always gives him options to roam and to pressure. On paper, Bard loves to verse immobile carries, especially from the ADC at the mid position, so that he can look to set up his Q and his ult more reliably. But drafts can be hard to perform in as well if you're versus like a high pressure bot lane and a mobile mid or jungle. I will talk more about the high pressure bot lanes and the lane counters, although for the mid and jungle, champs like LeBlanc, Kiana, maybe Kindred or Lee Sin, just very mobile champs, he can sometimes have a trickier time, but this shouldn't be enough to dissuade you from picking him if you're good at the champ and understand what he wants to do. All right, let's move on to lane synergies. And I want to preface this section by saying you do not pick Bard to synergize with lanes or to play for the 2v2. So with that said, ADCs or bot laners that either provide you with setup or allow you to roam are the best fits. So setup champs, I'm talking about the Ashes, the Varuses, the Jins, the Aphelios with his Gravitum. And then the champs that allow him to roam, typically Ezreal. And then there are also mages that aren't too common, but they will still pop up from time to time. This can be like Ziggs, Xerath, or Karthus ADC, who loves scaling up with solo experience for their abilities and have safe ranged wave clear. So neutral fits that you're not too fussed about are hyper carries like Cog, Twitch, Vayne, those types of picks. And then the worst fits are all-in ADCs, like Samira, Kai'Sa, Tristana, Lucian, who really need to have that kill threat in the 2v2, which is just completely against what you're really looking to do in the early game. So yeah, just keep in mind that Bard is not a laning pick. There are 100 better picks for you to synergize in lane. But I do want to give a special shout out to Kate and Jinx for being able to follow up with your CC and especially with your ult with their traps to chain CC. Okay, moving on to lane counters. Again, I want you to take this section with a grain of salt as you don't typically play around lane much. But he struggles the most in lane versus hard shoving lanes. If you think about Ezreal or Kate or Jhin paired with Karma, or the all-in lanes where you have the Samira, Kai'Sa, Trist, or Lucian with engagers like Pyke, Thresh, Blitz, Nor, which have a lot of pick in the early game. I want to put a special emphasis on Thresh here as a lane counter, as also in the mid to late game, his Lantern makes your picks a lot harder. He can stand away from his ADC, and then you ult his ADC, he pulls his ADC out before they get stunned, and that can be quite annoying. All right, let's talk about runes now. So what you want to go here is Guardian in 10 out of 10 games. Fleet, it's just a horrible decision. I know there's a lot of Bard players, some one tricks that recommend or play Fleet themselves. It just doesn't do anything post 2 minutes practically. Fleet achieves absolutely nothing in the mid to late game. It provides you with some lane sustain for a trade here or there early, but that's really nothing that your champ requires to function. If you're indexing into lane with runes, if you're trying to optimize your trading or Just indexing too much into the early game, you're doing things wrong for BARD. If you're desperate for tenacity, then unflinching and Merc Tread is plenty without going Legend Tenacity. I know that's one of the big factors of the fleet tree, so that you can go tenacity, but then this line is wasted, and then this line is wasted, and this keystone is wasted, so just don't do it. So back to fleet, if you imagine what it actually does, it provides some lane sustain. Obviously, it gives you some health back, and in the mid to late game, you're not getting poked out, you're not laning versus anyone. You're either setting up, making plays, or you're trying to desperately survive. And so the sustain you get from fleet is going to be absolutely irrelevant past laning phase. And as you will see, laning phase is pretty much going to end for BARD at level 3, like 3 or 4 minutes into the game most times. So it's really not a good investment to put your keystone on something that becomes useless so quickly. What we want to do instead is Guardian, and the whole Guardian tree, the Resolve tree, is fantastic for BARD. As I may have previously mentioned, BARD's weakness is early lane survivability, getting all in. Once you get to roam around and impact the map, you're in a great spot. So, Font of Life, you want to go this 10 times out of 10 as well. It's great scaling with your passive and with your Q. And then what we want to do is, there is some variation in here. It's mostly going to be conditioning and then unflinching. You should be able to circumnavigate the early game and reach that mid to late game point where conditioning is unlocked, and then you can be really tanky and not die. Sometimes in some lanes you can consider bone plating so that you really need it in order to survive. If you are versus those heavy all-in and heavy pick lanes, then maybe bone plating is the way to go. At that stage, it will be a toss-up still between conditioning and bone plating. If you feel like you will have space and time to go conditioning, maybe you can leave maybe your ADC is more adept at collecting farm from range, like I talked about the Ezreal or the mages, then you don't need to stay in lane to help him not get dove, and you can still go conditioning. Otherwise, I would say conditioning, probably 8 or 9 out of 10 games, you'd want to go this, and then bone plating can really help to patch up to prevent getting all in some lanes. For the bottom line, you want to get unflinching because this helps to keep your champion alive. Once again, if your champion stays alive, then he is going to be one of the best champs in the game. So we're going to index runes and items into helping him stay alive. Revitalize is probably almost never going to be chosen. There is always going to be some kind of slow or stun that tenacity will help to make sure that you don't get picked and one-shot. If there is absolutely nothing, then of course you can consider Revitalize. However, I see Revitalize way too many times on BARD. I know that it scales Guardian, it scales Font of Life, it scales Locket, but you need to stay alive, and unflinching is by far the best choice for that. So for the secondary runes, this is going to be Zombie and Relentless Hunter, and I would say 99 out of 100 games. As a playmaker who excels in mobility, Zombie Ward is perfect for him. He's going to be moving around, he's going to be sweeping, he's going to be able to safely clear wards himself as he has his mobility and his E to escape. And then Relentless Hunter, of course, ties into his roaming around and making plays perfectly. I will say that the extreme fringe case is you can consider Ingenious over Relentless. First of all, it does synergize with Zombie with having more uptime on your sweeper. But second of all, and the main reason you would want to ever consider this, is if you desperately need to have high uptime on items. If you verse like a heavy AoE comp, where maybe there's like a Karthus and maybe there's a Vlad somewhere, just a lot of AoE where you really want Locket and Redemption to stack up for your team in team fights, that can be a consideration. Or if there's like an Ashe, or maybe like a Varus that you really want to have high uptime on Mikhails. But for the most part, let us go Zombie and Relentless. This tree is just far too good as a secondary option for BARD. I don't even really want to talk about the others. I've seen some situations where people go like Celerity and Scorch, maybe some Inspiration users with Cosmic and Stopwatch, but really, the value that you get from Zombie and Relentless is just too good to give up. Okay, let's talk about the rune shards down here now. We want to go attack speed in almost every situation. He scales with attack speed in several ways. First of all, with his passive, when he gets more meeps to throw out auto attacks. Second of all, with zombie wards, so that he can kill wards more and collect more zombie wards. And it also helps to smooth out his auto attack animation a little bit. If you have absolutely no attack speed investment, he takes a little bit longer to dish out his meeps. And then for the next 2 shards, we want to help him survive. We don't need to index into damage. This is why we're not going Electrocute. This is why we're not going Celerity Scorch. Like, there is an AP variation of Bard that is worse, where you go Electrocute, Cheap Shot, Scorch, and you try to kill people. But his main weakness is getting 1 shot, so we're going to try and help him to not get 1 shot. That's the thought behind conditioning when it scales up. That's the thought behind the next 2 shards that we're going to take. Generally, the magic resist and the armor shard. If you verse full AP, obviously double magic resist. If you verse full AD, double armor. But you don't necessarily want to opt in for more damage than for more survivability. As if Bard survives and is able to use his entire kit to its full potential, he is one of the best champs in the game. Alright, let's move on to items now. For your starting item, you want to go Spell Thieves 99 times out of 100. You can make that fringe case argument if you are versus a heavy all-in lane. Just like you can make an argument for Bone Plating, where you want to survive at all cost with Relic Shield with that extra health pool. However, Spell Thieves is just by far the most common option that you should go for. And then you need to rush boots, and those should be Mercs, Tarbies, or Swifties, whichever gives you the most value. If there are a lot of auto attackers, if there are like 2 to 3 auto attackers, then you can go Tarbies. If there is a lot of AP or there is a lot of CC as well, then you can go Mercs. And if neither of the above, then you want to go Swifties. And Swifties is in general a really underrated and underused item. I might have mentioned it in my previous videos, but yeah, it's a great option. It is cheaper than Mobies. It has survivability in combat with extra move speed and a slow resist. So whichever boot gives you the most survivability is basically the concept. There will be quite a few games where you'll find that there's only like 2 AD champs, and then there's only like the mid laner for AP, and they don't really have much hard CC, and then that's where you'd want to look at Swifties. Especially if there's a lot of slows. Maybe there's like a Trundle, or there's a Zillion, something like that. Alright, let's move on to the Mythic. So after you've got your Spell Thieves and completed your boots, you're going to go Locket 10 times out of 10. You can weave in a Dark Seal before the Locket completion, and you can also complete into the Medjais if you are versus low threat and you expect that you are able to not die. Which also means that you're comfortable with the game pace. So shout out to Fruitcake for this one. He's a fellow Bard player, and he suggested the Dark Seals into Medjai's line, and it fully makes sense to me. Bard is the only champ to make this argument, in my mind, in the entire support pool for League of Legends. I think the Mythic Spike is not as important for Bard. As opposed to Enchanters, you might consider Dark Seal, but that is going to delay their crucial Mythic spike when they have their Shurelias or they have their Moonstone. So I would suggest weaving in this Dark Seal into your build if you have high mastery on Bard and the early game hasn't snowballed against you. Otherwise, if you're still feeling out Bard and learning him, then I would suggest just to go straight into the Locket. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but Locket follows the same thought process as all of the other runes that are helping him survive. It gives him CDR, it gives him tanky stats, it helps him to have an active to survive, and if he survives, he is one of the best champs in the game. Okay, so after the Mythic, no surprises here, we're going to build items that give us tanky stats to survive, while also having utility in whatever situation the game may be in. So you could consider Frozen Heart. If it affects 2 to 3 enemies, Frozen Heart is a great item, it's in a great spot, and it gives cooldown reduction, which is fantastic for Bard. If there is a heavy AP comp, then you would consider Force of Nature, as this gives him mobility and still that health pool that is important for him. As Riot has been nerfing heal cut more and more, you want to heavily stay away from the Chemtech Putrefier. It used to be okay, but now only if the enemy has a lot of healing and your team is very against building heal cut, then you can consider it. But for the most part, you want to look at the Frozen Heart, you want to look at the Force of Nature, you want to look at Knight's Vow. This is a fantastic item. It was just buffed in 12.11, and I pinned down this item to talk about it in 12.10. When I saw the upcoming patch notes, I knew that this was going to be a fantastic item on BARD and on a lot of supports. It used to only be good for melee supports and have a diminishing return for ranged champs, but they changed that, I believe, earlier this season. And it's just a fantastic item. Health is a great stat to invest in, especially after Locket, and just in general, health is the best stat to invest in if they don't have an overabundance of one damage type, whether that be AD or AP. And then the Knight's Vow active, You get sustain from it with, you put it on your highest DPS teammate, and then they heal you up. And you can also help to keep them alive. And then if everyone just stays alive for longer, you're going to be in a great spot. This used to be the role for anathemas, where you didn't want to index into Frozen Heart or Force of Nature, and then you kind of went for a middle ground HP item in anathemas. I was never the biggest fan of this, mostly because the active isn't that useful. The CDR and the stats were great, the cost was great. The application of its active onto an enemy was not the greatest. Like it would be only really good if someone is super fed, and then you can put your anathemas on them and then you take less damage from them. But the extra CC onto a target from yourself, it doesn't affect your ult. Your Q is going to be quite hard to land onto the ADC in team fights anyway. But now we have the Knight's Vow option, and that's the one that I would recommend to go for. I mentioned earlier that Redemption could be a potential item to consider if you verse a lot of heavy AoE damage, and that is not going to happen often, and I don't want to see that in your games very often. It should be a very niche decision to make if you are verse, like the Vlads, the Karthuses, the Fiddlesticks, things like that. I also want to mention that Vigilant Wardstone is broken as always, and Bard has access to more EXP than other supports with his chimes. So this is going to happen a lot in your games, and you want to buy it as soon as you are level 13. So that should give you a pretty good base for your items to give you tankiness. Either Frozen Heart or Force of Nature should be valuable in a game, and you can back it up with the Knight's Vow just to give you that overall tankiness. Then you get the Wardstone, and then the game should be all but over. I do want to briefly talk about Deadman's. This is a hard item to justify, in my opinion, unless Force of Nature and Frozen Heart isn't very good and you already have your Knight's Vow. And you also have Split Push, like a 1-3-1 comp where you want to be permanently roaming. And you're not looking for stats in skirmishes or team fights too much. Deadman's gives absolutely no CDR, and the physical tankiness that it gives can come from Frozen Heart. It's also much more expensive than Knight's Vow and Frozen Heart, so this is a bit of a bait item. I don't want to see many Deadman's Plates, I don't want to see Fleets, I don't want to see Moby Boots, I don't want to see Redemptions. These are options that people go for who are living 2 to 3 years in the past. Times have changed. Stick to the tankiness, the affordability, and the utility. So in that extremely rare game where you are going to go into your 6th item, you can consider like Zhonya's, you can consider Mikhail's or Redemption if they look good. You can consider the other option between Frozen Heart and Force of Nature. But this really is not going to happen too often, and you should have the core builds in almost all of your games before the Nexus explodes. Let's talk about Bard's ability order quickly. So this one's pretty simple. You're going to go Q level 1, W level 2, E level 3, and then Q first max, W second max, E third max. Versus a heavy poke lane, you can consider 2 points in W at level 3 or at level 4, just to help you sustain that lane, and then you go back into maxing your Q afterwards. You don't go 3 points into W because by level 5, you are typically just perma-roaming and pressuring the map, so 3 points in W is too much of an investment. I'm sure once you see the rest of the video, this will start to make a little bit more sense. But I wouldn't recommend to start W. It takes away quite a lot of your power at level 1. You're quite a strong level 1 champ with your passive and your Q. So there are some niche situations where you can go E level 2. This is where maybe you're getting an early gank, or maybe you're getting early ganked and you want to have that escape. Or maybe some really weird extended level 1 fight is happening with an invade, and then you want to shove a wave and then base and roam, and then you wouldn't be using your W in lane at level 2 anyway. So these are just like really niche situations, and for the vast majority of games, you're going to go Q level 1, W level 2, E level 3. Alright, let's talk about combos for Bard now, and I want to start off with Q Flash. This one's a little bit tricky because you have to point your mouse in the direction that you want your Q to go. So let's say I want to stun this first target dummy against the wall. I have to hold my mouse here and then Q Flash. So I will hold my mouse here and then Q Flash, and it'll go in that direction. If I just hold my mouse anywhere in front of me, obviously I'm just going to flash forward and it's going to go there. Let's say I want to stun these two and I'm walking this way, so then I will try and hold my mouse around this where I want it to go, like that. Okay, the next one is you ult into a double stun, and this is just going to be your bread and butter for looking for picks throughout the game. You ult and then you try and time it as well as you can, and obviously you can pair this up with your Q flash as well. So if you just try to get into range and then you find the Q flash afterwards, then there you go. So you just want to jump into practice tool for this one to get a feel for when is the earliest that you can Q them from your ult. The next one is ult into Q stun through enemies or through minion waves. So let's imagine that these are the two targets that we want to hit with our Q and stun. And these are either low priority champs or just a bunch of minions. What you can do is you can ult them all and then time your Q so that it stuns the back two. So it passes through the front and then it hits the back. Obviously there's a set amount of time that everything is in stasis from your ult, and then you want your Q projectile to travel past these while they are still in stasis, and then the stasis ends and then you hit the back two. And that would look something like this. Okay. Here's a situation that you're going to notice a lot on BARD, that people just don't flash your ults. They either try to dodge it, or they don't respect that they need to flash it right then, or they try to flash your Q for some reason. But you can actually make your Q undodgeable if you time it perfectly after your ult. So what this is going to be conceptually, first I want you to picture it where the enemy is in stasis, and then as they're coming out of stasis, your Q projectile hitbox is inside the enemy champion. And so as soon as they, awaken from stasis, they are instantly hit by the Q hitbox, and so they can't flash. And the second part of your Q stuns. So if the first part of your Q hits and then they flash, they're still going to get stunned to the wall behind them. So this is going to be another time where you just want to jump in practice tool and get a good feel for that. Maybe jump into a 1v1 with a friend, get them to stand next to a wall and just do this over and over again. So I'm going to try and demonstrate this on the dummy here, and what I want you to just have a look for is that as soon as he pops out of stasis, my Q instantly hits him and he won't be able to flash. And there you go. So this ult into unflashable Q is kind of the final boss for BARD mechanics. If you can reliably pull this off, you'll be using it constantly in your games, but it is very hard and you do need to put that practice in. In terms of the hitting the targets behind the front, this is going to be used a lot. Potentially, let's say there's a tower dive and you want to dive the enemy ADC. There's a minion wave here, he's here as well. You kind of ult him inside the minion wave, and then you want to hit him and the ranged minions at the back. I will talk more about ease in the 1% towards the end of the video, but I just want to physically show the most common ones that you are going to use from base on either side. You portal through here to bot. You can also portal through here to top. Another one is that maybe your E is on cooldown, like you were laning and then you kind of had to escape, and then you based and you don't have your E up just yet, so you can also portal through this wall over here. And I heavily recommend to use shift quick cast with indicator just to get that exact feel, because these can be very clunky sometimes. Another one you want to get used to is the alcove portal. So there are a lot of little optimizations that you can make for the portals around the alcove, but just for the sake of replicability, what you can do is stand right next to the fire, and then you can find a pretty... See, it snaps and it's quite awkward to find a really good one. Sometimes this length is all that you do need, but it can be done on both sides if you're just standing kind of by the fire, and then you can find an E pretty quickly. Only other major portals worth mentioning is that you can E through this fat wall, you can E through this wall, and you do want to make sure that you take the time to make sure that you're popping out on the right side. Like, let's say you want to go to river and then you accidentally pop out on this side. That would be unfortunate. And then the last one that could realistically be used, and this only works on the enemy's space gate, is you can portal through here. And the reason that it only works on the enemy's base gate is because the enemy's base gate counts as terrain, whereas yours does not, because you can pass through it. The next combo I want to talk about, it's going to start from a concept again. So your Q2, the second part of your Q, has a set distance that it's going to travel once Q1 connects. So the further that you can make Q1 connect from, then the further Q2 is going to end up. So this would look like, if I'm just going to Q this target dummy, the Q1 hits him at the very front. But if I stand on top of him, I can make the Q1 start practically inside him, and then Q2 is going to travel further. And so that's why this one is going to stun and this one isn't, is because Q1 is hitting and starting the Q2 at different places. So there are two realistic ways that you can use this. Let's say that you ult a couple enemies and then you stand inside one and then you Q them. Another way that you could use this is that perfect timing, so that when they do spawn, your Q1 hitbox is as far in front of their model as possible, so that Q2 travels as far as possible. So in that way, you will be able to hit these two target dummies with a well-timed Q after an ult as well. And that's what happened in this instance. So in short, if you are able to perfectly time your Q from your ult, then not only is it unflashable, but it will make your Q2 distance for stun as long as possible. Alright, we're going to move on to the early game explanation for BARD now. And he is a very unique champion, so I suggest that you check out the 1% for all the little things that you can optimize towards the end of the video. That's where that's going to be. This right here, it's going to be more of a general overview for how you should look to play BARD. He has a decently strong level 1, so you want to embrace your trades with your passive and your Q. Your level 2 spike doesn't do much, and then your level 3 spike, that's when you're going to be able to start roaming. So, strong level 1, otherwise you're playing the early lane like an enchanter. There's an early war of attrition where you want to auto-attack the minion waves a lot so that you can get the enemy to focus on the minion wave rather than trading with you, which you will struggle with. Also avoid mid-bush and bush contesting in general, especially versus engagers. You want to play that war of attrition. You want to freeze versus engagers after the first few waves so that you can have that safety, because BARD's weakness is getting all in, especially in the early lane. So if you have that wave management to freeze outside your tower, you're safe from getting all in. So I would also recommend, because a lot of these concepts I've already covered before and they're not too specific, to see support fundamentals laning and support fundamentals roaming for those roam timers and how you want to manage your early lane. So yeah, freeze versus engagers and have that permanent war of attrition versus enchanters. You don't want to try and freeze versus enchanters as they can just safely crash, and you want to try and overwhelm them with minions so that you can avoid trading and then you can find roams as well. So the more that you can achieve these two things, freeze engagers, war of attrition versus enchanters, the more that the rift is just going to open up to you and become your playground. And then you can just run around, roam and carry and permanently pressure. So when you have boots, when you have level 3 and onwards so that you have your E, that's just what you're going to be looking to do. You also want to get comfortable with the terrain around mid. You struggle to pressure through bot, and so a lot of the times you're going to be camping mid in the early game. And that is going to come with getting used to the terrain. So you can portal through the terrain by the river around mid. You can portal through the raptor camps around mid to gank, things like that. So along this theme of trying to pressure more around mid and in river, if BARD controls bot river and lives between mid and bot fog, he is just as happy as a camper. That's how he's going to pressure and carry the game. So I want to show more footage than try to explain his early game through concepts and theory, because he is a very unique champion and it's just going to be the best way to show you actual examples. Okay, so we're going to be reviewing some early games now. I am going to already start autoing minions, and what you will notice is that I do have 3 Spell Thief stacks. So if I do find that auto attack into Q that uses up all 3 of your Spell Thieves. So the first passive I am happy to use on the wave just to start contributing to the war of attrition. And then my second passive I'm going to look to use for Spell Thieves. If I don't use my first passive on the first wave, then they're just going to shove us in and I'll be hard done by to find a good window to use all 3 Spell Thieves. So here I get all my 3 Spell Thief stacks, and then I'm going to look to go back to that war of attrition and autoing whenever possible. And so the net result of the first wave, I'm really happy. We aren't at a huge disadvantage, and I've used 3 Spell Thieves. And so I'm posturing forwards aggressively here for the next wave. So now we can get level 2 first. Autoing, playing that war of attrition. Okay, and then I get level 2, I get to run at them, and then I get another Q off. And so it's around this time where I'm starting to be a little bit hesitant of a Shaco gank. You're going to see soon enough that it wasn't enough respect, but the trades that I am generally looking for are short trades, playing the War of Attrition and then short trades with Q into a passive auto if possible. So that's what I'm looking to achieve over here. Great. And then Zillion runs forward, so it's quite obvious that we are getting ganked. I just try to trade 1-for-1 and a bit of disrespect. So this is pretty poorly played from us. Our ADC dies. At least our jungler does get some time for free farm. Let's speed it up. I'm coming out of base, and I'm level 2, but I already, like, ideally you want to be level 3 to start roaming. But what I am doing, you can't really see it on the map here. You can see it physically, but not on the minimap, that there are chimes that I'm trying to chain. I'm not going to collect them early. Once again, have a look at the 1% towards the end of the video for more detailed explanations on things like these. But just a TLDR, I'm going to chain some chimes here to get move speed, and then I am already going to run mid here. No point pathing bot right now. There's a big wave that just crashed, and the only thing I could possibly achieve by being bot here is just soaking up some XP, and we have bigger fish to fry than that. So I noticed that there's some activity going on in the topside river here, so I'm just going to run to that. And what you can do in lane is you can go fishing for Qs, just to poke, just to proc your spell thieves. But come team fights and skirmishes, you have to really try to get the most out of your Q stun. So what you're going to notice in this fight, and hopefully in other fights, is that I don't just throw out my Q randomly just to try and poke someone. I don't just Q here. I'm going to wait for the situation to kind of dissolve a little bit, and for Shaco to pop out of his stealth. So I sweep to make sure I know where he is, and then I'm going to line up my Q, and then I'm going to make sure it stuns on the minion, and then that's what a good skirmish is going to look like for BARD. Okay. So I get my level 3 now, and I do have my boots, so I am practically late game already. I'm full build. I'm going to portal bot. I know that I have a brief window here just to use my 3 spell thieves and then get out. I'm not going to hang around to try and look for an all-in or something. Quick trades are good trades. And we'll speed this up just a little bit. Going fishing for Q stuns in lane, whatever. And now comes a time where I'm level 3, I have my boots. I even managed to shove out bot, which is a bonus, and it's time to start the mid camp. And this is a great game just to show what you can do, even if it's not a very volatile mid matchup and it's hard to kill mid, okay? So let's see what I mean. I'm going to roam mid, and there are many ways that this can go about. Either Azir respects my roam mid and never contests mid prio, and then that means we get mid prio, we can pressure enemy camps, we can start to suffocate them, play that slow bleed of League of Legends. Or if he's anywhere near the wave, I'm going to impact mid. I am going to force him to use mana. I'm going to force him to potentially drop minions, to lose pressure, I could chunk him. And so here I do not expect him to die. This is kind of like a War of Attrition gank. I'm going to chunk his HP and his mana and just impact mid like that. So we get a chunk, he uses important cooldowns and he's low mana. So I'm happy with that. And this is what you want. You want the enemy support and the enemy team to play your pace of League of Legends. As you can see, I drew Zillion towards mid here. It's not like I'm mind controlled, but this can happen if they don't really know how to respond to all of this. If I force him to play my game, I'm going to win. I'm more mobile, I'm better in the roaming and the picking and the skirmishing than a Zillion. So yeah, let's just keep seeing what happens. Bot wave crashes, no point being bot, and it's practically just going to be camping mid. So the only times I really want to consider going bot is if there's a frozen wave outside their turret, and then I really need to be there to break the freeze, and nothing else is really important. But for the moment, I don't need to be bot. The wave is still safely on our side of the lane, and I'm camping mid once again. I'm going to put a W outside of his vision, just to help the attrition in the mid lane, and I'm allowing my Ezreal so much space and pressure with which to play freely. And I feel comfortable in trying to look for something around the terrain of mid. And this is what I mean, getting comfortable with the terrain here. I could look for portals here in different situations. I can look for portals here. So we can see what happens. What we're going to note is that it's pretty poorly executed by me, but the results kind of checks out. So let's just see what should have happened and what did happen, okay? What should happen is I portal through and I find a queue, and then I'm backing off potentially. What does happen is he jumps forwards and then ults, so I'm going to be forced to flash, and then I can potentially burn his flash as well. And that is what ends up happening. So at the end of the day, it was pretty poorly executed, but the concept is important here. And playing around mid, trying to, you know, eke out advantages, and yeah, trading flashes with the mid laner, fantastic for me. Burning his mana, his health, fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to base, I'm going to get my tier 2 boots rushed, and I decided on Merc Treads because Varus ult, Zillion stun, and Shaco Fear, and yeah, so defensive boots, I figured Mercs was the best option here. And I'm just living in bot river, between mid and bot. I am not going to go bot unless I feel like I can achieve something. So maybe I can portal my jungler onto Zillion, or maybe I can clear a ward out or something. I can get some Spell Thief stacks here and E out as well. Whatever. So I'm not going to spend much time bot here at all. I'm going to get straight back to where I can actually pressure soon. Okay, so I'm running mid once again. And this is where BARD pressures the map. I'm staying in fog so that he doesn't see me. I'm ensuring that there's no vision around here. And another War of Attrition gank. I could not care less what happens here. Either he wastes cooldowns and mana and he gets chunked, or he dies, whatever. Really don't care. But there's always going to be something that comes out of it. In this instance, he dies. So that's kind of best case scenario. I would be perfectly happy with that War of Attrition gank once again. Okay. And what you're going to notice is that I just completely ditch bot. And Zillion is, he's kind of trying to do the same thing in terms of tempo, whereas he just can't really play the same game. Okay, so what happens here is that I'm pretty close to level 6, so I wanted to try and get some XP down here, but my ADC is not on the wave. So the only reason I'm around bot here is to try and get my level 6, and then if Diana wants to follow up here, then great. This is not going to happen very often. It's going to happen sometimes where the enemy will flash your ult. Sometimes I'll disrespect it or try to flash the Q afterwards. But this is a great trade. I'm forcing the immobile ADC to flash. My jungler doesn't even have to commit too far down here. I don't have to commit too far down here. And I can go right back to pressuring the map how I see fit. Through bot river. Camping mid. I know he doesn't have flash because I do time summoner spells. And then he had just used his E. So he's trying to dodge. No, he's trying to ensure it crashes, and then he just does he messes up his combo. So I'll take the free kill, whatever. As long as I'm pressuring around mid, whatever happens, happens. Okay, and now I'm starting to eye up topside because my jungler is top, and I noticed that we do have some potential for this. So if Darius postures forwards like this, I'll kill him. If he starts to back off, I will once again pressure around mid. But I started to notice that he's getting a bit disrespectful with the movements, and BARD is just fantastic at roaming around. So BARD and Pyke are pretty much the only two supports that can realistically roam topside with their insane mobility. So we get a kill top as well. I'm going to base, and this is another window that I did make a mistake. So I did know that Shaco has Herald. And so what I was trying to do initially was to hold my ult to match whatever Shaco wants to do. So I did ult the Varus there, and then For my next ult cooldown, I really want to match the Shaco so that I can ult his Herald charge and then he can't get much off. So this is also another reason why I am kind of moving up here. I noticed that my top tower is 3 plates, so if I was in Shaco's shoes, I would be looking to impact top and try to use Herald to destroy top tower. But then I commit to top and then he gets to run bot and Herald. So that was a bit of a mistake on my part. And that's just something that you can be on the lookout for, BARD, to not commit to any play and just purely react to the enemy jungler if they do have the Herald and prevent something like this from happening. Eventually I am going to move towards mid after clearing some vision. And I am trying to abuse my mobility. So the main points here are you pressure from 3 and onwards and you want to play around mid. And if you control bot river, the game should be very hard for you to lose. Alright, let's check out the next early game review. We are versus Akama this time, so still another enchanter. I get a ward somewhere, I go for a sweep. I'm going to play that War of Attrition initially on the wave. And then I'm looking to use my 3 Spell Thief stack once again on my second passive. So the same thing as last game. Play for that War of Attrition. Next passive comes up. I'm going to look to use my passive for my 3 Spell Thief stacks. So I'm going to auto and then I'm going to try to find a Q on the back end as well. So I'm happy. We're getting to control the wave in a support laning matchup that is pretty rough, to be honest. Okay. And so whenever I do have at least 2 Spell Thieves, I am going to look to try and trade with my auto to, proc all of the Spell Thief stacks. So I have 2 now. I'm going to be able to look for an auto here. We already have this shove secured. So my Spell Thieves is stacking up really fast. And we're just going to get ganked again. We're getting ganked a lot in these reviews early. Happens. The fix is that the ADC drops a ward somewhere around here after the second wave, but since we are taking sweeper, it's a little bit out of our control sometimes. Okay, so now we're getting a gank by Arcane, and I'm trying to make the most out of my Q stun. Like I said, in skirmishes, in fights, no Qs for poking. So yeah, I try to find a double stun here with my Q, and we kill the Karma and we get the Twitch cleanse as well, so not bad at the end of the day. Okay, so my Ezreal doesn't really know wave management. We have to base here, he doesn't base, that's on him. And so I'm going to start chaining my chimes from base and then try to play around mid, especially around bot river. As you can see, the mid laner just completely backs off. So I'm just going to be living in bot river for most of the rest of the early game. I get my triple Spell Thieves trade again. I play to shove the wave and then I am moving into bot river. That gives me the opportunity to move mid, to use terrain on this side where there's not much to be done around here. So this is a kind of a rinse repeat. I am happy to look for short trades, especially when I do have Spell Thief stacks. That's what I do here again. We'll speed this section up just a little bit, but this is a really good game pace for BARD. If we're not getting absolutely dominated in the early game, and I am able to posture towards bot river and control bot river, then yeah, it's just really good. Their jungle is really low HP, and then Karma is kind of forced to take a river skirmish, and enchanters do not like river skirmishes like this. So the concept here is I am once again trying to get the most out of my Q stun. I'm not throwing out Q for poke. Unfortunately, I miss it. It happens. But I am really trying to hold my Q to find a stun here. So here, I feel like there is an opportunity for me to find a stun. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work out. But as long as that's what you are trying to do. And then I walk Karma down the aisle over here and collect another kill. And we get another kill. portaling through just to follow up. Okay, and then once again, this Ezreal's wave management is just subpar. So what has to happen here is that we base, but he's a little bit foolhardy and he just runs forwards and tries to shove another wave, and then he's going to get punished by it. Coming out of base, and this is a time where I potentially should have just run straight to Herald. I thought that my Kayn was going to do his red side camps and that I could have the time to chain all of my chimes and then meet him on top river. However, what happens is that I am collecting my chimes and then he just runs straight to Herald after this camp, and then I'm a little bit slow. But this is a good time if you were to chain chimes to do it from base. So I'm chaining my chimes and they're already on Herald. A little bit awkward, but eventually I'm going to get around here. I get to clear out a pink as well, be annoying. I'm always safe and comfortable to do things like this because whenever there is terrain around me, I can just E out. Clear some wards here once again. And this mid laner is much more respectful of my pressure. So last game, you could see that Azir really allowed my roams to achieve a lot. And this game, the Sylas is just kind of getting permanently shoved in by the Akali, which is also fine for us. And I'm just going to play that bot river once again. I'm going to be a Fog Warrior, so I don't want to show on wards. I'm playing around there being a potential ward around here. So that's why I'm sitting here. And if I deem that they ever misstep, I'll kill them. If they play defensively, then Ezreal just gets to 1v2 farm up in the lane, and then I can continue to pressure around here, and that'll be the slow bleed kind of win. So Graves face checks in the end, and our Fog Warrioring is rewarded. Graves pops out, and I'm going to try to get the most out of my Q to stun against the wall. So I'm holding it. Now he's next to a wall, so I can stun him. I throw it on his right shoulder so that it can connect to terrain on the right. So I don't want to just throw a Q here, obviously. I want it to try and connect to terrain. That's what happens. He dies. And this is all a result of playing that Fog Warrior and controlling bot river. And just preventing mid and bot from being able to play the game practically at all. And so I know Twitch has no flash, and I deem that he is too far extended. It's very hard to avoid all of the plays that BARD can make like this. So I ult him, and then I'm going to try to stun him. We get another pick, and then I'm going to chain some chimes through bot river once again, clear out some wards. I'm safe to be annoying with my E. The bot river is still under my control. And then I noticed Twitch trying to take our pink and set up a pink of his own. I'm not going to allow that. I'm going to clear his pink out just so I can go back to being a Fog Warrior. And so their mid and their bot can't really function. Okay, so there's a skirmish up here. I'm more than happy to lend a hand to fights like this. Everyone kind of gets out. Cool. Still playing bot river the whole time. Bot river, Fog Warrior, moving between mid and bot. Pressuring the map. That's the name of the game. Alright, on to the next one. This is a VOD that I have been very excited to go over, and you'll probably see why shortly. So there's going to be a little bit of early action. So I get a double stun, and the game is just going to start off at a really fast pace. So I'm just trying to weave in orders when possible. The exact mechanics of this isn't my point, so we're just going to speed through this a little bit. Obviously very chaotic. They end up getting 3 kills. Okay, and I end up chasing too far, but we do get a kill there, so that's not too bad. And so I'm already pathing because I knew that there was a ward around here. I had some money to get boots and a pink. I procced my spell thief so many times, so I'm going to walk over here, pink this. I don't really care about lane XP. So this is where I do take E. I don't feel like it's necessary for me to take W, and there's not much trading going on in lane. And I want to be able to prevent Graves from just freely taking all of our camps over here. And this is what I'm going to prioritize. Pressuring the jungle matchup. If I was bot, I would just be kind of not really achieving much, just ordering the wave, maybe getting some XP, but that is not a big deal. So I'm going to steal the Gromp, and then I know that Graves' next move is most likely going to be on our Wolves, so I'm going to pressure the Wolves. Meanwhile, the enemy Nautilus is kind of making a play on mid, and so it's a very fast-paced, action-packed early game. Trying to waste as much of his time as possible, enticing him forwards, getting a bit chunked. So I slow down the enemy jungle's tempo, no regrets so far. And I'm level 2 by 5 minutes. And I'm still not prioritizing bot lane. I have my Q, I have my E, I have my boots, so I just want to pressure as much as possible. I'm going to clear a pink over here. Yeah, there's going to be a fight that erupts on bot river, and I'm not willing to concede bot river without a fight. I don't think Karthus should be able to do this. So he really wants to clear the zombie ward or something. And I'm going to try to dissuade it and slow him down. And then my mid and my jungler are going to eventually respond to this. And I'm sure you guys should know what to expect by now. I'm going to try to make the most out of my Q. And I'm not going to use it for poke or whatever. I'm going to try and get that double stun, which is what happens. And so this now, it just heavily turns every skirmish that you can. If you can get that double stun. So we pick up some kills. And I'm going to clear a pink. And so there's pretty much no downtime for me to just kind of chill and lane, but I'm perfectly fine with that. And so I know that bot wave is fine. Like, we crash the wave, it's pushing into us. I don't want to just be bot and achieve absolutely nothing. My plan here was to try and dissuade, either to slow down the Nautilus from reacting to this, or for Lilia to come and kill the Nautilus. Ideally, I would have had my Q around this time instead. But I'm going to try to do the most that I can with my following Q. And I just can't quite achieve anything. I try to kill him there at the end and he levels up. But I always have the E to jump through if necessary. So as you can see, very fast-paced game. And I'm just prioritizing pressuring, tempo, fog over everything else. So everyone's happy. My mid laner is happy, my jungler is happy, my ADC is relatively happy, and I have sacrificed all of my XP golds to just kind of pressure, and that's perfectly fine. So it's going to tick towards 9 minutes, and I'm going to be level 3, and my ADC is going to be almost level 6, almost level 7 himself. So these types of like really fast-paced, chaotic games, I'm sure that they have happened in your solo queue game as well. And I just really wanted you guys to have a look for yourself that no matter what, you don't want to prioritize gold and XP. All right, let's move on to the next review. So I hope by now that you have an idea of how the pace of the game should play out, with all things considered. If you can just control bot river and be that fog warrior between bot and mid, and also be comfortable using the mid terrain, then you're in a good spot. I wanted to show an example where we are playing with an all-in ADC, and there's a bit more of a bot-centric approach to the early game. Okay. So I want to try and aggressively posture around here. I eventually do end up missing the Q, but we do punish the Lulu for trying to walk greedily through here. And the same things kind of apply. I will be fishing for Qs. I will be looking to use my autos with my passive when I have Spell Thief stacks like this, and then I will be trying to auto attack and ensure level 2. And so, like in a lot of my games, my Spell Thief is on a really good timer. And I have seen some BARD replays where people just are too afraid to trade. You have great short trades with your Q and your passive. You have your sustain, and you really do want to unlock your quest for rewards as soon as possible. And also your boots, right? That is when you're full build. You have level 3, you have boots, and then you're good to go. I'm trying to place my Ws in locations that aren't easily denied by the enemy, but aren't so far away that we would lose quite a lot of pressure and tempo. So I felt like W here was a decent place to put it in the lane. I think that we do still pressure 2v2, although the wave is going to push into us. This is just something that you want to get a feel for as well. And so we're letting the wave push into us because we do have our jungler. She cleared down here, and there might be an opportunity with which to gank. So we'll see how this plays out. I find my short trades once again, and I'm able to get my W without it being denied. So I towed the line really well in this situation, that they wanted to try and deny, but they couldn't quite. And here is a situation that you don't want to be in too often, where you have to initiate the gank. So what I am trying to do here is trying to find that Q flash onto the Twitch. And I find it here. So I'm just waiting for him to get a sense of safety and for him to try to auto attack and kill the ranged minions. And so I feel comfortable doing that now when he's locking himself into an auto attack, and then I find a Q flash, ignite him to make sure he's going to die. And that's exactly what happens. I notice something's going on up here, and this is where the E that I was talking about in combos is going to come through. So there's a bunch of activity going on up there, and then I'm trying to line up the best E possible. Make the most of my mobility. And potentially save the Galio from disaster. So just straight tier 2 boots. So, I mean, this is a really big spike. I have a lot of mobility with which to work with now. The state of this lane, like my ADC has Dirk. That's a lot of all-in threat. I know that the enemy ADC used his sums in that previous engagement. So I do have a lot more emphasis on bot now. It also helps that my Galio is not mid and he is trying to impact top. So all of the stars are kind of aligning for playing through bot instead right now. Fishing for stuns with my Q. Trading when I do have my passive. Okay, I'm just waiting for them to leave so that I can safely sweep this. And they're quite extended up in the lane right now, so I will be looking for that all-in opportunity. And that's exactly what I look for. So this isn't like BARD's strength and his identity, necessarily. It's just that they have a wave that is way up near our tower. They have an immobile ADC. I noticed that Twitch just uses Q, Lulu just uses her W. So once again, the stars are aligning, and I'm going to be able to look here. And once again, take note that I really do want to make the most of my Q. So I'm going to stun off that minion, stun the Twitch. And so he's going to die, and this is going to be a bit of a rinse repeat. Fix bot wave, base, play through bot. Which isn't going to happen too often on BARD, like I have said. So I actually don't base, I'm going to hang around mid. And I mean, if the Lissandra wants to E forwards disrespectfully, I will force a flash. If she doesn't E forwards, I'm not going to do anything. But yeah, this is in Challenger, or at least Master Plus, and they are going to disrespect. So they will in other elos, for sure. I'm either going to posture around bot to freeze it, or play that bot river Fog Warrior style that I have been talking about. And so we're going to try and play for the enemy's camps here. It's just facilitating what my mid and jungle want to do. Okay, so we notice Twitch here, we notice Lissandra over here. We know Lissandra doesn't have flash, so this is going to be a attrition gank, ideally. Although Lilia jumps way too far forwards and just dies. The concept is I am trying to land that Q stun, I just miss it. So around here is a good time to throw it, and then I just straight up miss. So, I mean, she's going to die running forwards anyway. Okay, and we can just have a quick look at the scoreboard. So we're controlling bot river. Our Samira is getting quite fed, and we are going to try to accommodate that as well. I noticed that Twitch appeared around here, so we're going to kill him as well. Kill bot, fix wave state, control bot river, look bot, etc. I noticed that there is some activity going on up here, so I can definitely roam up for this. And I deemed that Karthus is killable with my Q and my passive. What we are going to see is he's going to drop down to 10 health, so a bit unlucky there. But this is a fight that I am definitely going to impact. I feel like the main difference for this game is that pressuring through bot was a possibility. In all of the early games that we have reviewed, I have been constantly pressuring, valuing tempo and pressure, playing through the right lane, trying to control bot river, and just be all over the map. Alright, this is going to be the last early game review, just because I did want to show you a lot of content rather than try to explain everything. We're going to play this one out pretty fast, just to show you for consistency's sake what you are looking to do. Okay, so you know how you want to look to trade by now. I'm really going to speed up this little section. Playing that War of Attrition and short trades. My ADC takes a horrible base, so I kind of have to base as well. But I do get my boots. And we're going to start chaining the chimes from base. Get a bit of a chunk there, get level 3, and now I have boots, I have level 3. I'm going to be playing in bot river, and then wherever I can pressure, I will pressure, whether that is mid, whether that is bot. That is the whole point. Pressuring bot river, if there is an opening, I will look to punish bot. Unfortunately, the Twitch just gets out. But I do have bot river control, and that is how you're going to have a great early game. There's a bunch of fighting going on around here. I really do want to breeze past this. You also want to look for those Q stuns and skirmishes, as you know. Okay, looking to punish. Pressuring through bot river and deciding that bot was punishable, so we're going to punish bot. Now playing through bot river, unlocking dragon, potentially moving towards a mid skirmish. Potentially looking to punish the Twitch if he disrespects. Keeping up our pink wards. Controlling bot river. Being that fog warrior as much as possible as well. Always looking to pressure somewhere and do something. Okay, so I managed to regain bot river. We get another kill around mid here. Let's keep going. So trying to chain my chimes from base again. So I wanted to chain them to kind of meet up around mid slash the mid side of bot river. Trying to maintain this as much as I can. And then there's going to be a bit of a skirmish that breaks out here. I try to save my Cassidon. And this is something that you can look to do. It's really hard to find examples because it doesn't happen too much, but you can ult your teammates to prevent him from just kind of getting all in, and then I can give him a W, I can give him that space to jump over the wall, and then Nocturne has to invest his ult, and he doesn't quite get the kill. Twitch has to get the kill. And so I'm trying to get the most out of my Qs in these skirmishes with the stuns. Okay, so that Q was pretty bad. I should have known that Vlad still has W. Okay, and I get another double stun with this Q, I think. So I'm just holding it and really trying to get the best time, and it's the best time when Rakana's right on top of us there. Jump forwards. And I hope you can appreciate the game pace and what Bard excels in terms of bot river, fog warrior, playing between mid and bot, and just having really high uptime and tempo forcing the game to be played at your pace, on your terms with your mobility. And I'm hanging around here because I know that their ADC doesn't have flash. So here's what I was talking about. The way that there are two ways I can stun this Twitch. One is that I hit this melee minion here, and then this one, and dodge these with my Q, or I can hit Twitch as he spawns out of stasis and stun against the minion, or I can hit Twitch and stun against the backside of the turret. All of them can work. What ends up happening is I'm going to stun him against the backside of the turret. But this is a pretty good example of trying to time your Q with your ult. And if you're not really thinking about timing, then you wouldn't really be able to find a stun here at all. So I had to dodge all of these minions. And yeah, that's the end of the early game reviews. All right, let's jump into the mid to late game explanation for BARD, and you're going to notice a lot of similar themes than to his early game. You want to have really high tempo, impact sides, sweep rivers, force flashes with R mid, constantly look to create number advantages, roam around, be proactive, be creative. The Rifts, it's your playground. That's how you should see it. You should float around like a butterfly. You should sting like a bee when you make a decision to look for a pick. And you want to pay more attention to sides than mid picks because of the innate mobility of your kit. It is awkward. You want to force number advantages on sides, and it's awkward to force number advantages in mid because it's the middle of the map and everyone can respond to it more easily. It's also a shorter lane, so there's less space with which to abuse your mobility. I want to briefly talk about his Q, which might sound a bit strange, but in lane, you can go fishing for Qs for some poke and to proc your spell thieves. But in skirmishes and in team fights, you really need to place a much higher priority on stunning with Q. So you saw that a little bit in my early game reviews where I am being a lot more deliberate with my Qs. So I already mentioned to be proactive and look to create picks. You really want to embrace chaos. And I'm not going to give you any kind of rigid structure to work with for BARD. That's not the best way to play him. You really need to just try things out and constantly look for picks and get a feel for how all of your spells can be used, because sometimes you want to E in, but you don't want to E into your death, and you just really need to start to experiment and abuse his mobility and creativity tools. I want to show you a bunch more examples to help you understand his mentality and how to feel playing him out. Okay, so the first mid to late game we're going to check out is that Samira BARD versus the Twitch Lulu game, where we did play a little bit more bot-centric. And the main theme of this, or a lot of my mid to late game reviews, is just forcing the game to be played at my own tempo. And I'm trying to find games where it's not just a complete stomp and I execute perfectly, but just more conceptually what you want to look to do with BARD. Okay, let's jump into it. So I'm going to force Twitch's flash. I'm going to have very little downtime in general. And I don't want to allow this scaling comp the time and space with which to scale. The Karthus, the Twitch, and the Lulu, they're going to scale absurdly well. So I'm just really going to abuse my mobility and play for tempo. So this is not going to be the greatest executed fight, but that's completely fine, as long as you're looking to force plays like this. Like, they haven't scaled up yet, and you want to try and find, just creative fights. We have a numbers advantage right now, and I execute this really poorly. I run off too far, and then my teammates execute it really poorly. So this passage of play is a little bit awkward, but this isn't going to deter me from being proactive. So we're going to speed this up just a little bit. I die. I'm going to come out of base. And I'm going right back to just trying to accomplish something, trying to get some vision around here, controlling around top river. And I know that Twitch has no flash from when I forced it over here earlier. And so I'm going to look to punish that. And I know he's stunned over here, and this is just going to come from a lot of practice on BARD, where he's invisible, so I don't see him, but I know how long my Q, I know how long he's going to be stunned like this for, and then I know that if I do Q flash at the right angle, he is going to be stunned, and that is what ends up happening. So I get the the punish, and it's very important to time flashes with BARD, especially versus like immobile carries such as Karthus or Twitch. And just notice that I am going to I'm not going to give my opponents any space to scale. And I'm forcing the game to be played at my pace. And so once again, I'm kind of happy with this fight because we killed the ADC. Like this fight over here, we one-shot the Lissandra before, then it didn't turn out too well. And we have a numbers advantage and they haven't scaled, so I'm happy with these type of odds. And I try to get a double stun there and it doesn't work out. So once again, I'm not paying too much attention to the micro of these skirmishes, just the game being played at my pace. So I find a stun, we clean them up, whatever. Okay. Right back to it. I'm going to be aggressively threatening to control vision around here. Zombie ward is just fantastic for playing that vision game and ensuring you're a fog warrior. Okay. So I am just in fog between mid and top. I could easily be between mid and bot, but the next objective is top tower. My jungler is top side. I want to play towards Galio rather than towards Tarm. And so that's why I am where I am. And here, this is just what you want to do. You want to react, you want to be confident, you want to abuse your mobility. So I'm going to portal through that long wall and get here much faster than Lulu could possibly imagine. And I'm going to stun off the TP here, which you can also do. And you can see Lulu is just so far away. And so these type of fights I am going to excel in. Let's keep going. So he's out, then he flashes away soon. That's fine. And so I'm still trying to be proactive. I know that he just used flash and I have my ults off cooldown now. And so I'm going to, yeah, I know that he just used his mobility as well. So this is a pretty long ranged ult, but I know he has no more mobility spells left. And so I'm pretty confident in landing an ult like this. I'm going to portal through. And then I'm going to try and predict his E as well. And even if it didn't hit, it's just the concept. Forcing the game to be played at your own pace. Abusing your mobility and your pick. And you can imagine how the enemy team feels. How the Twitch and Lulu feels with how the last 5 minutes have gone. Like they haven't had a second to breathe, to farm, to scale. Okay. So we're posturing around mid, and I think, yeah, let's just see what happens. So the Twitch pops out, and I'm going to force his flash again, and so it's just a huge cooldown, and Twitch is very unlikely to build Gale Force, so BARD struggles versus Gale Force ADCs, and that's just another dash you need to account for, but yeah, Twitch isn't going to build it, so him having no flash, that's for sure going to get punished in the future. Constantly being proactive. Let's keep going. You can just take a quick look at the scoreboard for how everything is panning out as well. And so I notice some activity going on in top side. Of course, I'm going to get there before the enemies can. And so if this fight broke out, I obviously would have been able to, yeah, just help. And I'm pinging for Baron because, once again, I don't want their comp to scale. I want the game to be played at our pace. I feel like we're on a bit of a timer with the Samira and with the Karthus Twitch Lulu, like I was saying. Okay, so I ult the Lulu. We get another kill over here. And I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit because I want to show you more examples rather than spending too long on one replay. We're just going to have a look at one more example maybe. So we know that Twitch doesn't have flash. And so what happens here is my Lilia lands the E. And so right now I'm spam pinging on the way. I'm spam pinging Lilia's ult cooldown is available. I'm portaling forwards. I'm trying to get her to just press the button so that Twitch dies. She doesn't, and so he gets away. But that's fine. That's the ace mentality. I know that she should. I'm communicating that she should. And if she doesn't, then I'm not going to overcommit and die. I'm reacting. I'm embracing reality. And this is something that most elos are going to have to become a little bit more adept at, in terms of not being deterred by your teammates not following up, or being on different pages with your team. I wanted to bring up the other example where we killed Silas over here. This could easily be another example, but you need to be confident. You need to know what you want to do and your strengths. So right here, I'm spam pinging on the way. I'm ulting. My body language, my pings, I'm very confident. My teammates know what I want to have happen. I'm just doing it. If they don't follow up, okay. You know, what do I lose? Just an ult cooldown. Like, it happens, whatever. Alright, so we got the Baron. Let's just catch up to where we were earlier. And so we missed the window to kill the Twitch there. I am completely unfazed. I know I did everything in my control. And I'm still going to play high tempo. And yeah, let's see what happens at the end here. Like, once again, I don't want to give them any space and time with which to scale. So now finally my Lilia does ult off of one of her E's, and we're just going to go really aggressive and try to close the game out. And the Twitch didn't have flash, once again, from my earlier forcing his flash. And yeah, that's it for this one. Alright, so for this game, it was an incredibly extended laning phase. Bot tower only falls at 19 minutes. But we are still going to look to play the game at our tempo and impact sides wherever possible. And we're not even that far ahead, so this might be a good game to watch. Okay. So playing that vision control game. And the reality is it's going to be tricky to get mid prio in this game, because they have their mid tower up and our mid tower is down. So that once again just kind of ties in to our identity for BARD to abuse mobility and look to impact sides. And so I noticed that Aatrox is trying to push a wave where he can't. And eventually people are going to slip up. This is really high elo, so this is going to happen at every elo. If he plays perfectly disciplined, then my Lee is going to be able to shove all the way out here, and it's going to become like a seesaw between them getting mid prio and us getting side prio. Eventually I will be able to find a pick, either by diving the side or forcing a flash on mid or something like that. But it's accelerated here. The Aatrox is too far up. And I know that he just used his E, I believe. Let's just have a look at this one more time. So I see him use his E here. I'm happy to throw out my ult now, as he can't dodge it. I'm trying to land that stun, which I do. And there's just nothing that the enemy team can really do about this. It'll be quite frustrating. Like, they can get mid prio, but as long as my ADC just concedes mid wave and then we get a kill on the side, yeah, it's just hard to match my tempo and my mobility. So unfortunately my ADC does not respect mid, and we can see what happens around here. So my Lee Sin did shove out bot, and now he is threatening a potential flank onto the Jhin. And so I'm going to, of course, try to follow this up. So we do a pretty sick combo, and we get the kill on the Jhin. Once again, high tempo, looking for constant plays, and they can't really keep up with everything that's going on. So we translate those picks into a Baron. And the game has just gone from a pretty even state to just blown completely wide open, stemming from the pick here into the Lee Sin priority. And then they try to get a wave that they couldn't, and then we got a pick on the ADC, and it's just snowballed so fast. And this is what can happen. Games can be very explosive in the mid to late. All right, let's jump forwards. I think there's one more team fight that I would love to talk about. Once again, my ADC is just stepping way too far up mid by himself and he dies. But maybe we're a bit stubborn, maybe we're confident, maybe we all have high champ mastery, but we're going to kind of hang around and, you know, just pod and proc on the edge of this team fight. I'm not going to force a stat check kind of front to back handshake fight. I'm going to play towards this side and I will be able to E out if need be. I'm going to be fishing for Qs. They can take Dragon. That's not the biggest worry. They're going to have to funnel and expose their flanks, and eventually we should be able to find an opening to clean up the team fight. So my ult here, it wasn't the greatest, but again, I'm playing on the edges of the fight. I'm playing on my limits, and eventually we just get to clean up. So this is quite a tricky fight to go over. Like I said, it's almost a champ mastery type of fight. Ideally, our ADC isn't dead, and we are using these waves with our Baron to just start taking towers and draw them thin on the map. But the reality is, my whole team's here and my ADC's dead, and if this doesn't work out, there's not much risk, to be honest. I'm always going to be able to play on the edge of the fight here, and yeah, let's just watch it one more time. So we slowly just collapse, and they can't handle the slow pace of this fight, and yeah. Alright, so this is the game that started off really excitingly, and I was level 3 by 8 or 9 minutes or whatever, and the result of, or the state that we are in for this game, is that we have triple AP topside versus a Fiora who is just going to be an absolute nuisance to be able to deal with. However, even if the game doesn't go smoothly, we're still going to give ourselves the best chance to win and to carry by playing the game at our own pace and abusing our mobility like we have been talking about. So let's see how this all plays out. I'm playing between top and mid at the moment. Playing in top river, being a fog warrior. Hovering in fog. And then I notice Karthus, so I'm like, oh, okay, we can kill him. And with my E, with my Q, with my R, dives on the side are very easy like this. I decide that I don't even need to use my ult. So we get a pretty straightforward kill pick on the side, while Fiora is being incredibly oppressive on the opposite side of the map. Let's keep going. Taking some control, doing some sweeping, cancelling some bases. Pressuring just as much as possible. Okay. And so I noticed that Karthus is on the side here by himself once again. And that Orianna is just going to kill him, so there's no need to really roam up to top right then. And so we're playing to control Dragon as well, and this is something that I wanted to also try and prioritize because Fiora is such a deadly win condition for them, and we're really struggling to have like a clear, concise win condition. Like, sure, our Jhin is fed, but that doesn't realistically... It can't really answer the Fiora. It doesn't really weigh the scales too heavily for us versus them. And so the Ocean Soul I thought was a great secondary win condition, so that our whole team can have that Ocean Soul and be able to just deal with Fiora and everything a little bit better. So that's why I'm also playing down here. Unfortunately, the dragon gets stolen, but we do get some kills. And we can just have a look at this fight as well. So I saw Ezreal use his E, and then I'm comfortable looking to ult. However, Nautilus ults and prevents too much follow-up. And this is just the confident kind of dancing around and not backing off unless I absolutely have to. And so I want this Ezreal to end up dying as well. And that's eventually what is going to happen. He dies on the back end over here. and you can just sense the game pace and the tempo once again. My Cho'Gath just runs forwards like an idiot. I don't know what he's expecting to happen, but I know Fiora has W. I'm holding my Q, and then right after the W wears off, I'm going to Q. Okay, let's keep going. And so yeah, by all means, this game is not going to be easy to win. I'm just going to do my best, play the game at my tempo. Once again, this is my tempo. I can match this. And the enemy team, they're just too far extended. And it's very hard to not be too far extended this BARD. So I'm trying to find a double stun over here. We get a few more picks. We notice Graves, we get another pick there. Translate that into Baron. And this Fiora is playing quite well. This is a professional player, so a lot of times just a random solo queue Fiora, he will be potentially overstaying here a little bit too much or basing in this bush or something, and then we can kill the Fiora, relieve some pressure on the map. But not in this situation. So yeah, the idea is that eventually the Fiora will slip up, and I will be there to punish. And so this is where the confidence can stem from playing aggressively near some terrain. So I don't mind messing around here a little bit. I'm trying to juke his Q, and then he ults me, so I'm just going to portal out. And then they're going to follow up. Fiora comes up out of nowhere as well. I'm trying to buy space and time for my team to follow up. They're investing quite a lot in me. And then I get another Q stun here. And so, yeah, I think the result shows that I wasn't necessarily out of position. My teammates were close enough. I could buy a lot of time. All right. So we get a couple useful picks around there. My team overstays a little bit. Let's keep going. Try to be annoying and steal a red. Playing in a quadrant, being a Fog Warrior, looking for creative picks. If they overstep at all, I will be here to look to punish them. Okay. And so yeah, this Fiora is really making the game hard to win. I'm going to speed it up just a little bit here. We're hanging around mid just a little bit too much here. And here, Fiora commits to killing the Cho'Gath, and now we can confidently look to collapse on the Fiora. So this was always eventually going to happen. I wait until her Q and her W once again is on cooldown so that I can confidently land my ult. And the enemy team is responding really well. When we do commit numbers up here, they're just pressuring another area of the map. So this is quite a high level kind of back and forth macro game. So playing that Fog Warrior, controlling vision, looking for opportunities in any of the three lanes if anyone ever missteps, which is quite tough to deal with for the enemy. And so we feel pressured to try and force this Baron because our Cho'Gath is just getting absolutely annihilated in the side lane. We can have a look at this little skirmish over here. Yeah, so we pretty much have to just coin flip a Baron 4v4 here as Cho'Gath is just getting annihilated. Once again, I notice that Ezreal has no E, and then I ult him. No one can quite follow up, but it's not the worst ult. Buying some space and time for the fight. Using my mobility. We get a few more picks. Let's keep going. Okay, and so we do have that Ocean Soul. And we have an incredibly fed Jhin, and they have a fed Fiora. And I just wanted to show this game in terms of even if it doesn't look clean and concise, this is how you want to play the game. Tempo, Fog Warrior, impact sides. If anyone ever missteps, you look to punish. Alright, we're going to talk about the 1% for BARD now, and there are going to be quite a few of those, so I hope you enjoy some chill BARD gameplay in the background. But let's get into it. The first point is that you want to save ult while the enemy has Herald. You want to match the enemy jungler's movement, and think about which lane he does want to Herald. Which tower is low and has, low plates, which of his lanes has prior, and he might potentially look to Herald through that. And so save your ult and don't look to be too proactive in that window. All right. The next one is to queue and then auto attack before you have 5 chimes. So when you collect 5 chimes, then your auto attack, your passive starts to slow, and then you can line up your queue a little easier. But before 5 chimes, queue first. Also, you want to trade on 3 Spell Thief stacks. So when you auto attack and when you queue, those are going to give you all 3 Spell Thief stacks. The rest of the time, you're not looking to interact in trades too much. You want to play the War of Attrition kind of between those short trades where you do excel, and don't be afraid to use your passive on the wave in order to try and get that upper hand on the War of Attrition when you are looking for that. In terms of portaling, we have shown these in the combos, so I'm not going to talk about them too much, but I will mention that if you portal across a pit, such as Baron or Dragon, if you portal across here, if you enter the portal from the side of the pit, it'll grant vision. Just as if you portal across here and you enter the portal from the pit on this side, it'll grant vision. If you enter the portal from this side, it's not going to grant vision. So this could just be kind of a cheeky way to give yourself some vision of a pit. Also, you can use your ult as a disengage tool, and if you do, you want to back it up by placing your W on the ally that is going to spawn out of your ult so that he can instantly get healed. And you also want to place an E to the nearest wall for him to be able to take that as well. And finally, you want to line up your Q on the enemy. So practically all 4 of your spells can combine quite nicely to disengage for one of your teammates. You should also save Q in these disengage scenarios that you're going to E out of. So you can Q them if they follow through your portal. And you don't want to Q someone and then E, then they take your E and then they can kill you. Mid-terrain is your playground. Get used to the mid-terrain. You can Q flash over the mid-terrain. You can E through the mid-terrain, obviously, and then Q. You can R around mid, then E, and then Q. Just get really used to making mid your playground. Also, ult the tower and tower dives, but not the enemy champ. If you ult the tower and the enemy champ, then you can't really damage the enemy while the tower is inactive. You can line up your Q, but a lot of the times you want to ult the tower, not the enemy, and then you get some free reign with which to dive. Alright, and W lane placement. Very specific to the situation. Too far back, and you or your ADC would have to concede too much space in the lane to sustain off of it. Too far forward, it gets stepped on. So just get a feel for those perfect spots where you want to place your W. It's kind of like spacing as well. Also, almost never insta-W a champion during laning phase, unless there is an all-in fight and they need the mobility and the sustain. Generally, if someone isn't going to die, just place a W behind yourselves and you'll be able to get that full value of the W. So if you're winning lane, maybe around halfway and towards your allies, your ADC side. If you're losing lane, maybe slightly behind your tower, favoring your ADC side once again. And so if your ADC is healthy and you need the sustain, then you can place it more towards river where you're going to be leaning and roaming. The same applies to mid Ws when you're Wing for your mid laner. But there is an extra side quest of keeping it outside of the enemy vision so that the enemy can't infer that you are or were around mid. And also try to place your W to favor their strong side if possible. If you place it on a side that they have no vision and no control, then they try to move to it, they might get baited and die to a gank or something like that. Okay, ping your teammates and your ADC to take portal. Almost every game in Challenger still, I have to ping my teammates to take them, especially from base. So if they're respawning, wait until they are within 10 seconds of respawning so that they can actually take your portal, and then ping them. Ping their respawn, ping on the way on the portal. Trust me, this is, for some reason, necessary. Also, trinket somewhere into going sweeper for your lane. As your level 2 spike, enforcing level 2 is not your strong suit. Lane wards, it's kind of lacking originality and critical thinking, and so you don't need to just drop a ward in mid bush and then go sweep. You've seen some examples in this video where I've dropped wards in more creative locations. The most important thing is that you do have sweeper, and Bard will flourish when he has boots, level 3 and sweeper. So just get creative with that as well. Chain your chimes. Early chimes do nothing. You don't make use of the movement speed or the mana, and you're just going to go to lane. So also your level 2 spike, it barely does anything, so that XP doesn't really go to use as well. Avoid them at the start of the game. Actively move around them when you're leashing, and then chain them, mostly when you're parting out of base. And so you want to chain them, collect the ones near the side of the map first, and then end up around mid lane, because that's where you generally want to pass towards. If you want to end up bot for some reason, you can chain the ones more middle and then end up on the side. But the other time that you can chain chimes is if you're struggling in the lane and you're trying to sustain up with W a lot, and then you spend one window conceding prio and just collecting all the chimes to top up your mana pool. Also, I wouldn't recommend to stress about chime breakpoints. They'll come when they come, and you want to pressure the map instead. You will be able to find some windows with which to chain all of the chimes up. But yeah, sometimes it is valuable to think about the mobility that the chimes give, though, not necessarily the 5, the 15, the 35 breakpoints. So sometimes it's better to chain 5 chimes bot and then go mid, rather than just straight go mid with that mobility that you can get from them. The time taken to travel to mid will be quite similar, and so the net pressure loss is minimal while you do get to stack up your chimes. People also, they will often greed to not flash your ult, but they will flash your Q. So once again, practice that undodgeable stun with your Q, or hold Q for after their flash, if you do expect that they are going to flash afterwards. And get used to that Q hitbox. It is quite fat, and you need the ranged minions in lane to be rather spread out. So it is hard to land in lane, but just keep trying it out. And you can also stun on some weird wall indentations. So the 4th W, you can instacast on someone, and it won't remove the standing Ws. So you can only have 3 standing Ws at a time, but you can place a 4th one immediately onto a champ, and none of them will get removed. Also, use shift indicator for E, so that you don't randomly make really small or weird portals. Also, W outside portals for your teammate's tempo. Let's say you're portaling out of base, then you place a W at the end of the portal so that your ADC takes the portal, gets the mobility from the W, and that's the most that you can do. Familiarize yourself with those long portals that we have talked about. And it's worth noting that E has a long cast range, which is quite strange, but it's useful for allies who need to take the portal as soon as possible. You don't have to run right up next to the wall. You can kind of throw it from a decent range away for your teammates. Pressure on riverside of bot. To roam, to place faster, to deter ganks, to portal through the walls. That's where you can exert a lot of pressure in the early game. You can also prevent your dash from being interrupted by R'ing yourself and then taking your E through a wall at the last second to give the smallest window possible of being interrupted. So let's say you're versed like a Thresh and you're scared of him flaying or hooking you out of your portal. You're going to push E on a wall, you're going to take it, you're going to ult, and then as soon or as late as possible, you're going to take the portal before your ult hits you, and then you're going to travel golden through the portal, and then that gives them the smallest window possible to interrupt you. And they can't interrupt you when you are golden. Your best way to pressure in a losing lane is fog towards mid. There's no point in just sitting around bot conceding prio. You can fog towards mid, and then you have that confidence near the terrain around bot river. You can also just annoy them and proc some spell thieves from that side. You can roam towards mid, you can clear wards, you can portal your jungler in, things like that. And as you have probably noted, the Q is an incredibly important skirmish tool. So you can go fishing in lane for procs, but in those skirmishes and team fights, you need to find that stun component. So you wait for your dash, you wait for the enemy to use dashes. You can follow up CC, and you can really line up those double stuns. At 35 chimes, your large cone, there is a large cone slow. So you can use this to set up your Q or your R. This is going to be in those mid to late game situations, and you can slow almost the entire enemy team and then follow up with that Q or R. All right, take E as late as possible versus stuns, so that you are stunned during your portal through, and then you don't have to experience the stun. Okay, free Q stun on TPs. You saw one example of this already, but just really get used to the TP timer as well, so that you can instant stun off the minion. You can be really annoying next to walls with your E up, so you can waste as much attention and time of the enemy as possible, dance confidently, dare them to try and force you away, and if they commit, you just E out at any time. Also, don't be afraid to ult versus mobile ADCs. For example, Kate and Trist especially, and sometimes Zeri, as you may have noticed in this example. They will very often try to dash out of your R, and it gets stopped, it gets cancelled, and it goes on cooldown. So I recommend that you ult slightly behind their model, and it almost always works, as their first instinct is to try and move away and dash, but it just never really works out for them. And the last point we're going to talk about is to R to cancel pending damage, such as Vlad's ult, Karthus's ult, Fizz's ult. That can be really useful to disengage for a teammate. And I'm going to wrap up this 1% section just by saying this champion is very unique, and there are a lot of situations that I wouldn't have mentioned, but those are just some starting points for you to consider. Thanks for watching and making it this far, everyone. I apologize for the video length. I just can't help myself. I love the champ so much. BARD is so much fun. So please consider liking or subscribing if you did enjoy this video. The link for School of Support coaching for individual coaching and to join my School of Support Discord server, they're all going to be linked in the description below. And I wish you some very magical journeys. Goodbye.